We're thrilled to have Dr. Katherine Iscoe on the WellteQ webinar this morning. So welcome, and welcome to all the participants.
Great.
Just to give you a little bit of background around Dr. Katherine. So she's the co-founder and director of the corporate health and wellness of MyPhysique Limited. And MyPhysique is an ASX listed company with a current market capitalization of $40 million. She helps transform the productivity and profitability of a company by attacking problems from the ground up. She's a firm believer that you can't have a strong business if you don't have a strong mindset. Really looking forward to this one today. So Katherine, over to you.
Great, wonderful. Thanks so much. And thanks for everyone for dedicating their morning to listening to me, the little midget Canadian over here in Perth, WA. So if you're wondering what my accent is, it is in fact Canadian. I moved here 10 years ago to do my doctorate on scholarship. So previously to this, I've done a bachelor, a master's, and here in Australia, a doctorate. And then I continue to do my certificate in counseling, a postgraduate degree, simply because clearly I couldn't get enough school, that I just wanted more pictures for the wall. That's the main thing. So to give you a bit of background about what I'm interested in what I do, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. So essentially after I finished my doctorate, there was a lot of experts out there that were helping people lose weight. So it was all about calories in, calories out. And all these people were, personal trainers and making a lot of money. So I was thinking, I can do that as well. That's what I'm going to do. But to cut a long story short, essentially, once I started actually talking to my clients and really get into the nooks and crannies of their life, I realized that they were very similar to me. They were chasing something that was unreasonable. So for myself, I previously have dealt with mental health issues such as eating disorders and depression. And essentially, I was trying to fix those things by trying to have the perfect body. So that's where the body confidence focus of my brand and business really comes in. So what I've done is I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients, and I started to see patterns. So obviously my researcher brain said, okay, there's got to be something here. And I developed a really simple but effective theoretical model that I just want to spend about 1 to 2 minutes telling you guys about so you understand where I'm coming from. So I'm going to use the whiteboard in the back. If anyone has a psychology background, they'll recognize this as being very Freudian. So that iceberg with the id and ego and so forth. So right here we have the top of an iceberg. I'm not a great graphics designer. I'll just warn everyone now. So up here is the only thing that we can see on the outside. So this represents our body, which also includes our mind as well. So we do everything possible to try to fix how it looks and how it functions. So what we typically focus on is what I call the surface variables. So here's the rest of the iceberg. And there's 2 surface variables, or 2 sections of that iceberg. One is nutrition, and the other one is activity. So typically what I find is a client will come to me and say, I just don't feel myself, and I just need to diet, and then need to lose this weight, and I have to start eating more kale and doing more squats. So they come to me very sad, and they dive under the surface, or this is what they've done previously, and they focus only on what they've eaten and what they do for exercise. And yes, this might work for maybe a week, 2 weeks or so, and then at the end of the week, it might be Friday, and they might have just a drink after work, just 1 drink, and then they're going to go for a walk or go to the gym. That doesn't happen. It ends up being about 4 drinks, and then the whole weekend is completely blown. And this cycle happens over and over again. We get back on the bandwagon on Monday, we're eating great, we're exercising, and usually by Tuesday to Wednesday, we start falling off again. So what my treatment plan really entailed is trying to open up people's vision to understanding that their body and mind is a lot more complicated than what we eat and what we do. If it were as simple as that, we wouldn't have a multi-million, billion-dollar problem on our hands with obesity and the health epidemic. So let's talk about the other factors that are at play here. Below here, we have sleep and stress. Those are two big factors that probably you have low levels of sleep and high levels of stress. And what people don't understand is that oftentimes sleep is this very, very fantastic medicine that we don't realize that that's going to be a cure-all, in particular for our stress. We plan everything in our life, yet we don't plan to get more sleep. And this is something, if you really think about it, animals will put their lives at risk to be prey, yet we just think, oh, we're just gonna watch one more episode of Game of Thrones and then we'll go to sleep. Because we figure we worked so hard all day, so yeah, we deserve to just rest and recuperate. But the fact of the matter is that is also a key catalyst for the problems that were occurring in our lives. So the other factors, and we're really going to concentrate on these today, we also have state of health, state of mind, and satisfaction. Those are all into play as well. And typically what I find is if you're not satisfied in your work, in your life, in your relationships, this will crack and spread to all the other areas. Yet we just think we're gonna fix everything by having a great diet and an exercise plan. While those things do help, they aren't the full picture. So perhaps if I can, a show of hands or something like that, how many people here, if they have a very stressful day, they might grab maybe a muffin from the staff room, or they might not go to the gym? Does anyone associate with that? Let's see. Hands up. Yep, we got lots of hands up. Excellent. Yeah, a lot of people, right? So let's dive into the mindset behind that. I want to talk about something simple, and it's rules. Oftentimes with our diet, we think if we're not eating perfectly, then we're failures. Does anyone associate with this? It's almost like, okay, Monday, I'm gonna have just vegetables, protein, and other than that, the only thing I'm allowed is air. That's about it, right? Monica, you can definitely associate with that. So this is what I call black and white thinking. We're either doing fantastic, we're sticking to our diet, or we've eaten something or drunk something that we shouldn't. So we're in a very split mindset. We're either angels or devils. So a concept that I want to talk about is called 50 Shades of Green. It's a very, very simple concept. And essentially all it is when it comes to nutrition is we have foods over here that are less green. And then we have foods over here that are more green. So these are, I know this is probably going to be reverse for you, but just think about these foods as the foods that you want to eat more often. That's it. So everyone's diet is going to be different. For example, if you want to eat more veggies, this is what you want to do more of the time. And over here, this is sort of like the cake and champagne. We don't want to avoid these things because guess what? These things taste really good. And they also create experiences. For example, I just turned 40, gosh, I guess it was a couple of months ago. And on my 40th birthday, I didn't say, okay, I'm just gonna have steamed broccoli and poached chicken. That wouldn't be something that really fueled my soul. That night is a night that I said, you know what, I'm gonna have a couple extra glasses of champagne. I'm gonna stay up late. I'm gonna talk to my friends. I'm gonna make connections. And if anyone has been to France or Europe, you'll understand that connections and that love is made through food. Now, if you're making connections through food every meal, every day of your life, we know that your balance is more on this side. All we want to do is do a step approach to try to get you, on average, more in the middle. So rather than thinking about deducting foods from your diet, think about adding foods to your diet. So when you look down at your plate, you're not restricting foods, you're actually adding foods. And of course, I don't think I'm gonna have to go through what foods are more nutritious for you and what foods aren't. I think there's plenty of information and almost too much information about that. But a simple rule to follow, guideline I should say, is essentially just adding more vegetables in your diet. That's it. It's very, very simple. And minimize any kind of black and white thinking in regards to rules. A great example of this is if you have kids. Does anyone have kids here, especially little kids? If you do, the one thing that you might say is, imagine if you say to little Johnny, whatever you do, don't go into mommy's purse. What's the first thing that they do? They go into your purse, right? Kids, so we're exactly the same. If we tell ourselves, you're not allowed cake, you're not allowed champagne, you think about that all the time, constantly, constantly, constantly. So the next little tip I have for you is just changing the words that you use. So instead of saying, I can't have chocolate or I can't have champagne, you switch that term from can't to, I prefer not to. I prefer not to have cake 3 times every day. I prefer to have something more nutritious. Now, if we switch this over to activity, we can do the same thing. I have to go to the gym every day versus I'd like to go to the gym every day. And while this seems like such a tiny change in language, it's amazing the effect that it has on you, because all of a sudden you are in control rather than something else controlling you. As I always say, control the controllables. It's very difficult in our life, especially when we're in high pressure jobs. A lot of the things that we deal with, we are not in control. We are not in control of what people do, if they do their work onto deadline or not. What we need to do is start controlling what's in our court. And that can be the words that we use in here. This is what we have to control. So in regards to activity, it's the exact same thing. I'm going to do essentially the exact same chart. So oftentimes, I'm not sure about you guys, but how many people here have said maybe about 100 times, Monday I'm going to start exercising? Anyone? And then the Monday comes, you go to work, and then your boss is like, by the way, we just got a new blah, 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 and you basically have to achieve 1,800 hours of work in the next hour. So you're superhuman. You don't head home until midnight, and then you're exhausted the next day and you still haven't done all your work. So you're just trying to catch up. Every day is just like trying to catch up, and the work just keeps on piling over. So you're thinking to yourself, I'm never gonna make it to the gym. How do you feel? Like a failure. Like you're constantly failing, like you're constantly not doing what you should, right? So again, I want you to step back and start to look at activity in a much broader sense, because the body is very, very simple in that way. The body, if I scratch my head, that's movement. If I go like this, that's movement. As I always joke, your body is sort of like a guy. It's sort of really simple. It's basically going or not. Us women, we're a bit more complicated than that. We have all different shades of gray, right? But basically, if you're putting one foot in front of the other, you're moving. And if you're moving, you're grooving. Your body's happy. So again, back to this chart. We have basically, bad at drawing here, but this would be a chair. And this is where we're at a majority of our day, right? Then we're thinking over here, we need to be at the gym. We think that's the opposite, and it's not. That is essentially just moving. That's it. Putting one foot in front of the other. It's as simple and as complicated as that. In the middle here, that's where we have, that's supposed to be a dumbbell. that's where we go to the gym, or we do an activity that we enjoy doing. So it's not like you're either sedentary or you're at the gym. You are either sedentary, and anything above there, anything above here is a win in my books. Because again, if your body is moving, it's contracting muscles, it's utilizing energy, and most important, it's regulating your hormonal state, which is going to help this. And when you have a more positive mindset, you make better decisions. So when it comes to your stress in your work, the one thing, again, control the controllables, is changing the way that you look at your choices. Oftentimes we look at them as failures. What I want you to do is change the way that you look at them and just make teeny tiny little better decisions, which is maybe getting up instead of emailing a colleague that's on the other side of the room, getting up and talking to them. And you might be thinking, oh my God, that's going to take so much more time. But how many times have you written an email and then you change it, then you change it again, then you change it again, where an actual conversation might be even more efficient? Now, you're going to know your life way better than I will, but we can make movement a priority. Because as I always say, if you have 5 minutes to look at Instagram, and Instagram typically doesn't make you feel better, you have 5 minutes to get up and just walk around or stand up. It's the little things that are going to add up and make the most benefit for your health. It's not the, yes, I'm going to go to the gym, then I'm going to be absolutely sedentary for a couple days. Then I'm going to go to the gym, then I'm going to be sedentary for a week and have the cake and champagne and feel horrible for ourselves. We need to open up our field of view and start looking at things in a more positive way. Now, just to finish off on this activity, again, we can switch our mindset and look at things and try to pick things that we actually enjoy doing. Let me ask you this. How many people really love doing their taxes? Anyone? Everyone's probably like, absolutely not, unless you're an accountant or a really excitable accountant. You probably don't like doing your taxes. So what if I were to tell you that you have to do your taxes 3 times a week, all year round? Would you be really excited and do it? Or actually do it consistently? Probably not. So if you don't actually enjoy exercising and, for example, going to the gym and doing weights, why do you expect to do it consistently? So there's a big difference between I have to go to the gym and I want to go to the gym. If you're not saying I want to go to the gym, I would bet my entire shoe collection that you will not do it consistently, and consistency is the key, as cliche as that sounds. So one of the main things that I do with my private clients is we take them out of the gym, save that money, and do things that you actually do enjoy, which may be going to the playground with your kids, doing yoga. There's so many possibilities, but again, it's just moving the body. It could be touching your toes 10 times. It's just moving. Our lives are way too short to hate what we're doing in regards to exercise. So for me, it's taking 20 minutes out of my lunch break and walking my dog, who's currently dead asleep in the sun right now. That to me is a beautiful break, and it's just to break up my day. So again, to recap, when it comes to food, remember, there are no bad foods and good foods. There are just foods that we want to eat more often and foods that we want to eat less often. Also, when it comes to food, we want to take an additive approach. Think of your plate as data, as information. You want to add the more nutrient-rich, dense information to your plate. So things, again, like dense vegetables, fibrous vegetables, et cetera, depending on your diet, right? When it comes to activity, don't have the mindset of, I'm sedentary, I'm lazy, I've sat all day. Have, again, the additive mindset that I got up to talk to a client. or a colleague 10 times a day. I played with my kids at the park. I did that. I did that. We need to switch our mindsets from constantly being failures to have a more additive approach. So I hope those tips helped. And I think we're going to use the rest of the time for any questions that you may have, if that's correct, Stacey.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. That was super interesting. Thank you so much for the little tips and hints there. Guys that are still on the webinar, if you just want to type in your questions from the bottom by clicking on the Q&A section, and those questions will come through to Dr. Katherine.
Great.
Now, while we're waiting for some of them to come in, I actually just wanted to ask one from my side. So I'm sure just like most professionals out there at the moment, I'm incredibly busy. I end up being pretty back to back. And instead of having time to cook, because it's like the last thing that I think of, I kind of grab food on the run. And therefore the choices are probably a lot less, particularly if I'm getting home pretty late at night. So I tend to eat more junk food. What can I do in that sort of situation?
Sometimes it takes a bit of effort to actually find other options. And I can honestly say, independent of where you are in the world, there's always going to be options. But because we're in such a routine, we're, back to back. So this is a place I always go. This is a place that I know I'm going to get my food in 3 minutes and I'm going to be able to stuff it down my face and then run again. We need to take a bit of time to replan and look for other options. And it's not like you're gonna go from, junk food to eating, steamed kale, but it's just making a more nutritious option. So again, it's that 50 shades of green. We don't wanna do a massive jump. We just wanna do a step approach. So it's actually just looking to see if there are other options. The other thing is there is, again, not dependent on where you are in the world, there's so many incredible food delivery options that are available. In Singapore, I know there is, and definitely obviously in Australia, that you can actually get food delivered right to your door, sometimes frozen, sometimes not, for if not the same price, if not less than what you would do out. So then that actually minimizes your time even more because you have that food with you. So there's tons and tons and tons of options and tons of great businesses that are available to minimize that workload and that effort of finding foods. So basically doing a Google search sometimes, food delivery, healthy food delivery. They can also deliver right to your office as well. So just a cooler pack, yeah.
That's such a great idea. Do you know what? I didn't actually think about that, getting food delivered to my office that I could then, take home. Obviously, we've got a few fridges in our pantries. Thanks for the tip. I think we've got another question come through. So this person has asked, many thanks for sharing your thoughts. What's your take on digital health for weight loss? Do you think mobile apps are effective?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm slightly biased with my company, but I actually think in some cases they're more effective. And I'll tell you why. My customers, my clients, when they come see me, oftentimes it will take them about a year or year and a half to come and see me. People feel a lot of shame because they've let their health go down in the dumps. So by the time they actually come to see a professional, they feel like they need to make excuses or they need to give reasons. Oh, I've been really busy until now, or I've been busy with my kids, etc., etc. When it comes to mobile health, you don't have to explain that to anyone. You can do it in the privacy of your home. You can do it at your own pace and when it's good for you. Typically, I love it for that first step prior to, if you need to come see a professional. It's almost like a secret way to getting back in control again. So I think the world of it. There's also, obviously, with My Physique, and a fantastic app, that it gives you feedback for what you're actually doing in your life. There's several studies that show when you actually have objective measurements or the indication that change is happening, you're typically more apt to actually stick with the program that you're on. So it's almost that positive feedback loop that keeps you going, again, on your own terms. So highly recommend.
Great, thank you for that one. We've had another one come through actually. This person here says, I don't have time to exercise. I'm in back-to-back meetings every day. How am I supposed to fix this?
Yeah, great question. So we touched on that a bit. I think the main thing to recognize is sometimes you literally do not have time to exercise. But if you want to step back and look at your day, start to look at it from an additive approach, meaning, were you up and about? Did you walk back and forth from these meetings? Were you standing? Were you moving your arms? Once we start looking at movement in a more positive light, we don't feel as much like failures for not going to the gym or not exercising. The other thing is to look at, what is your mindset when you get home from work? You know, if it's really, really late, is it that, oh, I haven't exercised again, so might as well just sit on the couch and eat ice cream and maybe eat the cake as well, and then you have a bad sleep? Can you change your mindset into saying, well, I didn't make it to the gym today, but you know what? I did do this, this, and this. Therefore, maybe I'm going to try to do 4 things tomorrow that are active. It's amazing that, again, when we change our mindset from looking at things that we do well versus always focusing on the things that we are not doing, it's amazing that that transpires or catalyzes more positive choices in regards to our health.
Okay, there's quite a few questions coming in now, and I'm conscious of time. Dr. Katherine, do you want to pick maybe one more? I'm pretty sure you can see them as well. And then what we'll do, what's the best way for the rest of the participants to ask other questions for you?
If they just want to email me at info@drkatherine.com, that's one way. The other way is I do have a private Facebook group. It's called the Confidence Club, and I've had a bit of a pause from my Q&A sessions, but I do live Q&A every Thursday in there, which is a fantastic way not only to get your questions answered, but also to get the answers of questions that you didn't even know you wanted answered in there. So I definitely recommend coming in there. It's essentially, you go to Facebook, you type in the Confidence Club, you request to join, make sure to answer the 3 questions so I know you're human, and I'll see you in there. That's probably the best way to do that.
Excellent. And when we send the recording to all the participants, I'm assuming that those details will be there for anyone who would like to join the Confidence Club or directly email you.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Can do. Yes.
Okay. So, well, if you've got time, if you'd like to answer maybe one more, and then, yeah, great. And then we'll probably close off.
Alistair asked a really interesting question. Do you see orthorexia on the rise right now, given the overload of info and fad diet, marketing, etc.? The reason why this question really interests me is because I couldn't agree with that anymore. I think we're in the type of mindset now where the quest to become healthy has become unhealthy. So for the participants that haven't heard this term before, orthorexia means, well, you've heard of orthodontist. So ortho means to straighten. So orthorexia means to straighten one's diet. So to be very, very fixed. And essentially what happens is we start to deduct food from our diet. So it's a very deductive approach versus what I was saying today, which is additive. So you start saying, I'm not going to eat anything with grains. I'm not going to eat anything that's processed. And as these rules start to become more and more, your ability to eat food becomes less and less. So yes, while I do think that fad diets and marketing and so forth are to play, sorry, there's a little fly there. I think there's also, again, if we look back at here, this sort of model, typically what I find with my own clients, when they do dive down the orthorexia rabbit hole, typically something else in their life is not going right. So, and that's with many, many disordered eating patterns or eating disorders that have to play. So it's really looking at this model and saying, you know, most importantly, where is your levels of satisfaction? Do you feel fulfilled with your life? Because if you don't feel fulfilled, when you wake up in the morning and you're not excited for your day ahead, oftentimes you try to control something else. And if you have a very addictive personality, oftentimes you control food, because we have to eat all the time. So why not control that? And again, this is just anecdotal reporting here. This is nothing to do with actual research findings, but from my findings. So hopefully that answered that question. It's a really interesting question. I could go on forever.
Okay, actually, because there's so many questions, I think those participants that are happy to stay, how are you for time, Katherine?
I'm fine. My next meeting isn't for another half an hour, so let's
okay. Yeah, so let's invite those participants that are happy to stay online, because some of these questions are incredibly interesting. And why don't we see if we can get through so many? Those of you that, unfortunately, if you can't stay because of time constraints, why don't we make sure that you know, you'll have those answers in the recording. But I think, you know, there's such great engagement here, we should probably keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll start with this one at the top here, which says, many thanks for sharing your thoughts. What's your take on digital health oh no, we've already answered that one. Oh, we have, haven't we? Yes, we have. Yes. Is that right? I think we have.
That's right. Yeah. I asked that one live, sorry.
That's right. Sorry. Yeah, so that one's done. What % would you attribute diet versus exercise to weight loss? Ooh, very, very interesting question. Very interesting question. If I had to pick either, I would choose, the reason why I'm sort of in half mindsets is it really depends on the person. There are some people here that really, really enjoy food. For example, my partner, I don't think he would be living if he didn't have, you know, beautiful food around him. So for him, taking that away from him would really not be good for anyone, and especially me. He would not be in a great mindset. So for him, I would focus more on activity. The problem with him is that he's very busy. So it's a catch-22 there. I think they're both very, very important. Exercise in particular for our mindset, but diet also obviously important, because that's what fuels our bodies. So you wouldn't put in dirty fuel or gasoline into your car. So the more nutritious you fuel yourself, the better you're gonna run. So yeah, I wouldn't actually say one or the other. I think it's very, very person dependent. That's what I'm going with, independent of what research says. So that's my answer. So I'll do that one. The other one is, can you recommend a mental health depression management app? I actually can't, because I think when it comes to mental health and depression, I truly believe that we need a connection to someone to speak to. And it's funny, I was watching this documentary on talk therapy, and this is when they didn't know anything about psychology. And essentially it was very Freudian in the sense that the client would sit and look at a wall and the therapist would be behind him. So not connecting at all, but it was a concept of talking and having someone listen. So when it comes to something as important and as serious, I think, as mental health and depression, I think the first step would be to find someone to speak to in person, not even through Skype. That can be obviously a first step, but eventually actually speaking to someone in person. So that's why I probably don't recommend any apps for that reason, if that makes sense.
Now, there's one that's come through on the Zoom chat. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yes. It was actually answered by Dave. Yeah. Okay, great. Yes. Just in case you missed that one, I'll let you answer that.
Great. I use my watch to remind me to get up and take a break. Is relying on technology to do something we should do naturally a bad thing? Absolutely not. I actually have, one of my clients has an app to actually remind them to drink water. And it's for a few different reasons, mostly because of her health. She's very, very busy. She's a food stylist, and she has 8-hour days, and she's constantly around food. But because she gets dehydrated, she also often gets very weak and very fatigued and lightheaded. So she has an app that essentially just buzzes every hour to take one glass of water. So same goes with standing, same goes with anything, or even just to take a mental pause break. Perhaps that might be a good sort of side answer to that last question. If it has anything to do with just taking a break for your brain, I absolutely think that would be beneficial as well. So that's beneficial. And I know, Dave, for example, I know that in the afternoons you go for your walk and you get an apple. That's a perfect example of something that people can do routinely during the day, not only for a mental break, but also a physical movement break, which you can schedule in.
Yeah, great. And I think obviously coming from our side, we're true believers in the use of wearables and how that can affect positive behaviour change. But great tip on the apps there for water. I think that's something that people underestimate, how hydrated they are, particularly when you get stuck into a work project. Excellent. Well, if there's no more questions from, there's some more come through here.
Oh, yes. Would you recommend skipping meals for a type 1 obese? I presume, I'm just jumping, but I presume type 1 diabetic obese, or type 1 obese as in category. Either one. Skipping meals, this is not diabetic. Okay, so type 1 category. I would say no, because it gets back to, and again, this is very, very person dependent. But what I find is that, the chart that I was talking about over here, once we start to go into restricting, what happens to our mind? We start getting very, very hungry. And oftentimes, if we become very, very hungry, then once we start eating, we keep on saying, just have one more bite, and then one more bite, and then one more bite. So I know there's this big fad into, what is it called? When you don't eat for a while,
Intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting, thank you, sorry. Clearly, maybe I need breakfast as well. Thanks, Alistair and Stacey. Which works for a lot of people, but from my personal perspective, when I've worked with clients that have done intermittent fasting, that is typically worsen their problem because they cannot stop thinking of food. Just when they're fasting, for example, until noon, from the time they wake up until 12 o'clock, they're actually eating, all they're thinking about is that time when it hits 12 p.m. so they can eat. So are they really focusing on work? Absolutely not. If they're out with a friend, are they really in depth in that conversation? No, because our mind focuses on food. So it really depends on your personality type. If you think that skipping a meal would be effective for you in the long term, go for it. But I would say 9 times out of 10, it typically spirals into more negative eating patterns. And that's from my own personal perspective. Thank you for your thoughts. Why do some people who eat all the time remain slim? I feel I hardly eat and I'm naturally hungry, and eating a little, I get bloated. Again, it's interesting, when I started my degrees about 15 years ago, it was big into calories in, calories out. And there was this massive stigma against large individuals, either overweight or obese, that there was something, that they were weak-minded, that why can't you just stop eating? Why are you so lazy? And that was really, both in the research world and in the medical field, a massive stigma against them. We now know more and more, due to our genetics, and also in regards to our hormones, that people that are overweight and obese typically don't have negative or weak mindsets. It's simply because of their physiology. Their physiology, your hormones, which is basically like a whole bunch of, if you think about them as molecules that convey information. So there are certain hormones that tell your brain, hey, I'm hungry, you better eat. And then there's other hormones that say, okay, yeah, no, I'm good, I've had enough. And they're to do with everything from our stomach expanding and contracting to our pancreas secreting hormones. In persons that are overweight and obese, these chemical messengers aren't really working that well. So it's almost like we can't even control our own body. And the other thing, and I'll go down a rabbit hole just for a second here, what we have to also recognize is the incredible dominance of our microbiome. So our microbiome is essentially a whole bunch of bacteria that lives in our digestive system. What we now know is that our microbiome can actually dictate what we want to eat. And I'll give you a really interesting example. I have very, very bad digestive problems because my past history in disordered eating. I was anorexic, then bulimic, then binge eating for many, many years. And as a result, I can't digest foods great. While I was looking for a cure for it, I did what's called a fecal matter transplant, which is essentially when they inject or implant another person's healthy fecal matter, or poo, if you will, into my body in trying to regulate my microbiome, because obviously my microbiome was off. When I came out of the first implant after surgery, all I wanted was hummus. So for about 2 weeks straight, my partner thought I was going nuts. I was literally eating pails and pails of hummus out of it, like with a spoon. So just from that experience, and also the experience with working with patients that are overweight, I can honestly say that it's not because of your mindset. There's nothing wrong with you as a person. It has to do with your physiology. And what we now know is if patients that are overweight or obese do start working with a specialist, there are things that they can do to change that physiology so they can actually eat what they need to and still lose weight. So I'll stop there, because if not, I will keep on going and I will just blab on for the rest of the day. So thank you for that question, and please do feel free to email me directly if you want any information about that specialist.
Okay, I can still see that the questions keep piling in, and I myself even have more questions as well. I think in the relationship to time, we should probably close off now and just encourage everyone to get in touch personally, and definitely join the Facebook group, reach out to Dr. Katherine here. Thank you so much for your time, for your efforts, for your expertise sharing as well. We very much look forward to engaging with you again, and hopefully running a series of these.
Would be wonderful. Thank you so much again to everyone for dedicating their Wednesday morning and coming online. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And we look forward to sending out the recording and all of those details later. Thanks.
Great. And just this last question in regards to my email, I will be sending it out, but just for now, you can send it to info@drkatherine.com. So that's pretty easy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Have a great Wednesday.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.